Hey guys, welcome back to Library Says. My name is Jamie, and today I'm going to tell you all about my favorite books that you have never heard of. So all of these books are ones that I have read and really loved, but are criminally, tragically underhyped. And I just want to spread the word. I want to spread the word, and I want you to know why you should pick them up, even if you're not seeing them all over BookTube, all over Goodreads, all over wherever. First up on my list is Notes from My Captivity by Kathy Parks. This was one of my favorite books I read in 2019. It's a YA story of a girl who goes along with her stepdad to Russia while he's trying to find and investigate and research this family who supposedly has magic powers that was chased out of their hometown and into the Siberian wilderness. And most people believe that they aren't real, that they never had magical powers, of course, and that if they did exist, they are long dead in the wilderness. But he really believes that they're there. She does not. She does not, like her stepdad, doesn't believe that this family exists, but she gets him to let her come along so that she can report on the whole thing. Her great ambition is to be a journalist, and she thinks this will be her door to fame and stardom and success as a journalist, this adventure to Siberia. But things go really badly. She ends up in the woods alone, and she gets taken in by the family that doesn't exist. There's a romance that's really well done, the adventure, the survival elements, and there's also a touch of magical realism, and I think it was just the perfect amount. Next up is an adult book, sort of literary, definitely unique and unlike anything else I've read. It's The Gargoyle by Andrew Davidson. This is the story of a porn star. He's a man who once was a porn star. Now he's top of his game as a porn producer. He's wealthy, and he has this sort of live fast, die young mentality that leads to, early in this novel, one night, him driving drunk and being in a terrible, terrible car accident that leads to fire, there's an explosion, and he ends up in the hospital with burns on 90% of his body. The novel takes place primarily in a hospital where he spends months and months recovering. He meets a woman who also is staying in the hospital who tries to convince him that they knew each other in a past life where she was a nurse and he was a soldier in medieval Germany, and he was badly injured. She nursed him back to health, and theirs is a doomed, fated romance, and they were always meant to reunite. In modern day, she is a sculptor who sculpts specifically gargoyles, and there's some fun parallels between what she sculpts and our main character, who considers himself a hideous, deformed gargoyle, now with all of his scars from his burns. And the atmosphere and the dynamic between these two characters and the flashbacks to this previous life, we're not sure if it's true or not. Also, is this female character that we meet mentally ill? I mean, is there any foundation for this, or is this all part of a delusion? It's wonderful. Just please, if you're intrigued at all, go pick it up. The Gargoyle. Next up is light adult sci-fi. It's The Mad Scientist's Daughter by Cassandra Rose Clark. I've read this so many times. It's a really good reread for me. Very light sci-fi, takes place in a distant America, post some sort of event, I think environmental, but we really don't dig into it because they're just living their lives in this version of the world that is highly technologically advanced, but clearly a departure from the way things used to be for some reason. We start this book following Kat when she's a young girl, and her father, who is a scientist, brings home an android named Finn to be her tutor. We follow her through the course of her life, all the way into adulthood, and her always evolving relationship with Finn. It is fantastic. It is a romance, it is light sci-fi, but where Cassandra Rose Clark really excels is her beautiful writing. Everything is very slow, everything is very emotional, and it's just beautifully written. It's not action, it's not driving plot. It's just a book that I have to sort of pour myself into. Okay, so the next book on my list is YA, but it's young, so I think it would probably be appropriate for most middle grade readers as well. It's Elsewhere by Gabrielle Zevin. This is a sort of magical fantasy-ish story of a girl who dies. That's not a spoiler, that's the very beginning of the book. And after she dies, she wakes up on a cruise ship headed for an island called Elsewhere. Once she arrives at Elsewhere, she meets all of the other people who have recently passed away. And once on Elsewhere, they age backward until they're infants, just about newborn age. And that's when they go back to Earth to be reborn and live another life. The characters in this book are what's really gold. Everyone's quirky, everyone has a different personality. The relationships are really beautiful. The town of Elsewhere, this community that builds on this island, it was a quick and easy read, but very magical. The whole experience of reading it was sort of wonderful. All right, then we have My Real Children by Jo Walton. This is a sort of sci-fi book, kind of, or something. It's speculative. This book starts with a woman who's in a nursing home, suffering from Alzheimer's, suffering from dementia, and looking back on her life, strangely has two sets of memories. We follow both sets of memories, and it essentially boils down to a single choice she made and how wildly different her life turned out depending on what she chose. And we follow her through her whole life on both paths. It's sort of like Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I haven't actually read that, but from what I've read, it compares to that. But this is sort of a darker, a little bit more literary, a little bit more sci-fi-ish version of that story. What I really love about this one is that it's not just her life that changes, it is very far-reaching. The politics of the world, all sorts of things change because I guess butterfly effect, right? Like a tiny change amplifies out across humanity. And this story does it really well. I was so engaged with both storylines. All right, and then I have a YA romance. This is Puddle Jumping by Amber L. Johnson. This is a contemporary sort of slice of life story about a girl whose best friend as a child was a boy who had autism, and he moved away, but now he's back. And their reunion and their evolving relationship. It's sort of a case study of how a boy on the spectrum and a girl who is not form a relationship, and their dynamics with their families and their relationship at school and how they overcome obstacles. And it's lovely. It's lovely. This is a self-published book, or at least it was when I first read it. So I just bought the ebook way back when on Amazon, I believe. But Amber L. Johnson is the mother of a child with autism, and so you can definitely feel that in her representation of the characters. I can't speak to that representation, but I think it's handled really delicately. I would be interested to hear someone's own voice's perspective on this book. And last, but definitely not least, is one of my favorite books of all time. I've reread this so many times. I was actually gifted it on my 17th birthday by one of my high school friends, and have reread it so many times that the cover of my paperback, which I still have, is falling off. So instead I'm going to hold up my sister's hardback copy. This is The Last Summer of You and Me by Anne Brashares. Now, if you've heard of Anne Brashares, it's definitely because of the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. This is not that. This is adult. It's sort of a romance, sort of just general fiction, and it is a standalone. This is the story of two sisters who their whole lives have spent every summer at a beach house on Fire Island off the coast of New York, and have spent plenty of time and spend each summer with their next door neighbor, Paul, who is a boy their age they grew up with. Now, when this book starts, they're adults, and it's been a few years since they've been back to the island for a summer, and they're all returning for a reunion. There is a romance that's wonderful. The atmosphere of Fire Island is beautiful, and it's so comforting for me to reread this book because I feel like I'm slipping into a warm bath. Like, just so comfortable, and it's just so good. But the best part of this for me is the relationship between the two sisters, Riley and Alice. I am very close to my sister, and so reading a sister-sister adult relationship that is so well done, I'm so impressed with what she was able to do with this book. And I've made my sister read it, I've made all of my friends read it, and they all loved it too. It has mediocre ratings, so maybe you have to be the right kind of reader in the right kind of mindset to go into this one, but I loved it so much. And the really interesting thing about this is, like I said, I got it when I was 17, so I read it going on 12 years ago the first time, and I've reread it many times since then, and every time I read it I have a different experience with it. The things I loved about it when I was 17 are not the things I pick up on and the things that I really feel invested in now as an adult in my late 20s. So I highly recommend you pick up The Last Summer of You and Me. So that's it, just a quick list of books that I really love that aren't hyped, that you're not going to hear a lot about, that maybe you've never heard of. Hopefully some of those intrigue you, and if they do, I hope you pick them up. If you do read any of those, or if you have already read any of them, I would love to hear what you think. And that's all for now, so I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.